So I want to know from you, like, what's one or two things you think we've been maintaining the status quo on far too long?
I think that one of the things that is really important, and it gets really kind of glazed over a lot, is compensation. Compensation really is the reason why we are all at work. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm not
Would
here to the
any
goodness
of
of my
us
heart.
work?
No.
Right? Would any of us work if we didn't get paid? Maybe if we were independently wealthy or, we had this other money supply. But we work to get money. That's what we do. That's why we work. And compensation in so many organizations gets pushed to the side. It gets sort of outsourced to these large firms and you pay a ton of money for. And at the end, you're like, what did I get? And it's such an important thing. It literally is what puts food on the table for families.
Yep.
It's what puts people into, the different schools. It's what puts people into like summer programs for kids. It's literally what helps pay for some of the extra healthcare costs that aren't covered, even with insurance, right? It really is so important and it is glossed over so much. And what I have found to be surprising to me is that even in our industry, even in HR, even in people and talent, there are far too few compensation experts. There are a lot of HR and talent execs that try to do compensation, but they've never done it before. And it really is at a detriment to that organization because they're really trying at something that is so important for people, right? Like when we always say, and there's not a lot of HR people who love to do payroll. But if we had to do payroll, what do we always say? You don't mess with people's money.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Rule number one,
do not mess with people's money. And, so if you're one of those people, we've all kind of been there. We've all had to do payroll here and there when we don't want to. It's definitely a finance function. But it's not messing with people's money. And it's so important. And when I talk about compensation, we have so much work to do just to get to equality in compensation, let alone equity in compensation.
Yeah.
And there are far too few organizations ready to have the equity compensation conversation. And equality means just like actually giving people the same amount of money for the same job. And not saying like, well, I knew Joe for 5 more years, so he's going to get more money than Sam because I don't know Sam as well. Or say, that's not equality. Equality is they have the same job title. They should be paid the same.
Yeah.
That's what that is, right? And even getting to that point is really tough for a lot of organizations. It takes time, it takes money, and there's a way to get after that and go about it that a lot of execs just don't know how to do. The second thing with that is talking about equity, right? We talk about the compounding elements of, say, Wall Street, right? When you put $1 into Wall Street and it compounds every year, it gets you exorbitantly amount more money, 7 or 8, whatever, than if you would wait 100 years and put $1 in. It's the compounding effect that really makes it valuable. Well, it's that in reverse for those that aren't white and those that aren't men in compensation. And so if you think about that backwards, the negative compounding effect of a white man getting this salary, $5,000 more a year for 20 years is vast. And when you start to think about how much money is lost and how much inequity there is in compensation, that is one of the things that is so majorly important and is not talked about enough. And it is, I think it's definitely one of those things where we find comfort in doing like the, we're going to tie performance to compensation. And again, that is based on such a like subjective metric of one person's idea of what another person does in their job. And by the way, that person may have no idea what that person actually does on a day-to-day. They may have, they might talk to them for 2 hours a week. They don't actually know how they're doing. And that person's livelihood is based off of that one person's idea of how they're doing. Like if you think about it from just that pure boiling it down to such pure dynamics, that doesn't make any sense. But so many companies still continue to do it. And there are better ways to do compensation that are separated from performance.
Yep.
There are better ways to do compensation that are more equitable and more equity driven. And it's just not something that we hear about enough. And it's interesting because it is actually the longest chapter in the book on purpose, because it is so important. And there are so many complicated pieces to it and so many things that you need to think about. But that is one piece where if you can get that right and you can do it really well, people are going to be highly engaged. People are going to be loyal to you. And people are going to be like, how can I grow my own career at the same company? Because you are providing literally more livelihood for them to be able to do their role. The second thing I would say, like what should change and work, and how can we push against the status quo, is being very transparent on where you are now. And just having an idea of saying, we're pretty good here. We're pretty good here. But where we've got to do some work is in between. And yes, that takes vulnerability. And yes, that takes courage to be a leader and say, we don't have it all figured out. But no company, no leader has it all figured out.